is a Weinberg Wednesday. Veteran Eagles writer Dave Weinberg joins us each and every Wednesday to talk about the Eagles and whatever else is going on in the sports world as well. And as all guests, he joins us on the Boardwalk on the hotline. You can check out his mid-season Eagles grades right now over at 97.3ESPN.com and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Dave, how you doing this Wednesday?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So before we get into the grades, which folks can read the full explanation over at 97.3 ESPN.com, I wanted to loop you into a conversation that's been had throughout the day. Do you think Carson Wentz will finish his prime in a Philadelphia Eagles uniform?
Prime? It's a tough one. Prime, probably yes, only because they probably can't afford to get rid of him. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes it elsewhere. I hate to be on both sides of the fence here. I'm kind of hedging my bets a little bit, I guess. I can't help but feel that maybe if he doesn't show improvement soon, that they might grow tired of him. And the fact that Jalen Hurts was drafted in the second round, I don't think they necessarily drafted him to sit on the bench. So maybe there is a scenario where, you know, they just decide to go in another direction and maybe find a team that's willing to take on that big contract, I guess.
See, I agree with you. And my reasoning is that the team has a history of moving on from players before coaches. They did it with Andy Reid. They did it with Chip Kelly. And I could totally see them saying if we have to pick between Doug Pederson or Carson Wentz, they're going to pick the head coach because from my experience watching the Eagles, they've done that before. They've kept the coach over players numerous times, even if it is the quarterback.
Yeah, that's true. Although with Chip Kelly, though, he was the one making the decisions. So
Sure.
That's where he's going to keep himself, I guess. It got to the point, though, where he was just so insufferable that Jeffrey Lurie kind of lowered the boom on that. But, yeah, you're right. They have shown, a lot of loyalty to coaches. I mean, Andy Reid being the obvious example. But, you know, Ray Rhodes was given 4 years. Andy Reid, Chip Kelly, Doug Pederson now. And I mean, Doug Pederson won a Super Bowl, so I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon.
The other reason why I think I could see them moving on from Wentz, to use the election term, with 5 years reporting, I'm projecting that Wentz, I don't know if this is the Wentz anymore that we saw coming out of college or in 2017 or even 2018. I genuinely believe, David, maybe I'm harsh, maybe I'm being a bit over the top, and I think your grades on the website show you're frustrated with Wentz as well. I think his ego has gotten in the way. And as someone who claims to be a Christian, he's definitely letting his pride get in the way. And I think that's why you're seeing him fall apart, because it's coming to bite him in the you-know-what. Because I think that when he sits there and stares down receivers and makes throws that are obviously not necessary, it's him basically saying, I know better, I'm too good, I know better than the play call, I know better than everybody else, and it doesn't matter if I make mistakes because I'll just bring us back in the fourth quarter.
Well, you do want a quarterback who's confident in his abilities, but however, you're right. Carson seems to have kind of thrown, I don't want to say common sense, kind of out the window. He's such a believer in his abilities that he thinks he can make every throw, that he can make every play, and that's just not the case. Good quarterbacks, elite quarterbacks, they know when to throw the ball away. They know to look for other receivers. They know to run and when to get out of bounds. And he just, I don't know if it's pride or what it is, but it's clearly that there's some sort of disconnect between him and Doug Pederson now. Doug is, almost every week is talked about trying to dial down the aggressiveness, knowing when to throw the ball away, when to take a sack. And he just hasn't gotten that message yet. I don't know if he ever will now.
Yeah, who knows? So let's throw on some of these grades, because some of them I 100% agree with you on. Some of them, maybe not so much. So I want to hit on a couple that I agree with you on, and hit you with the one that I disagree on. How about that?
Sure.
So I love the fact that you gave the wide receiver tight end position a C minus because it's so obvious that if Travis Fulgham never came along, how much of a dumpster fire and how much worse this team would be at the receiving position with the poor year that Zach Ertz has had, Dallas Goedert finally coming back from an injury, Rager finally coming back from an injury, Greg Ward, I don't even know how they're using him half the time. I feel like Carson Wentz doesn't look his way enough. And let's not forget the fact that John Hightower has dropped, 3-4 passes at this point?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I gave him the C minus was, you're right, was Travis Fulgham. I mean, he's been the far and away their most effective receiver, probably the best player. I gave him the offensive end midseason MVP. I just think he's pretty much been the whole offense, really. And, especially with Miles Sanders being hurt, so they took away the running game. Like you mentioned, Ertz and Goddard have both been on the sideline for extended periods. Deshaun Jackson's out for who knows how long. Alshon Jeffrey still hasn't played. So, yeah, it's the only reason I gave him that high, like I said, was Fulgham. And Ward, I think, has been pretty productive in the role that he has, which isn't much, but he's a pretty reliable receiver, too.
The grade you gave is C to the running backs, and I feel like that C is kind of in conjunction with the coaching grade of a D, because I feel like, at least from my two eyes, Dave, that the running backs could be more productive if maybe Doug Pederson used them a little bit differently, and maybe if Carson Wentz, actually scanned the field every once in a while and saw that the receivers wide open in the flat, maybe the running backs have a bigger impact. So I feel like that your D grade for the coaching and your C grade with the running back are kind of, joined at the hip there.
Yeah, you're right there. I gave them as high as I did because Miles Sanders has shown he's a home run hitter that they haven't had in a long time. I mean, to break off, a couple of 70-yard plays that, you just don't see that every day in their offense. So, but the problem is he's been hurt a lot, and they need him out there. And when he's not, they really don't have anybody to go to. I mean, Boston Scott has shown flashes of he can play really well for a game or two, but I don't think that he's best when he's a complimentary player, not the workhorse. And I'm befuddled by the way Corey Clement's been used. He just doesn't seem to. I don't know. He was in the doghouse a couple of years ago. He just doesn't seem to get out of Deuce Staley's doghouse, if you will, for a couple of years now, and I don't know why. I mean, he's pretty healthy, and I think he could be fairly productive if they give him a chance, but they just don't seem willing to give him that.
So here's where I disagree with you, okay?
Okay,
I feel like you didn't give the Eagles' defensive line a high enough grade because I look at this defensive line, and to me, if that defensive line isn't there, this defense doesn't have a chance because of all the injuries they've had in the secondary, the pathetic play of Nate Gary. I feel like you have an Eagles defense. They're third in the NFL in quarterback pressures. They got 28 sacks on the year. There are 20 teams that have allowed more passing yards than the Philadelphia Eagles defense. I think this defensive line doesn't get the credit because you have such poor play after them that I think if it wasn't for them, this team would be way worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, you have a legitimate point there. Can I change my grade? No. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Brandon Graham fan. I have been since he came into the league, really. He took a lot of heat when they first drafted him. He's dealt with a lot of pressure that as being a first-round pick, and it took him a while to kind of grow into his role. But he happily changed positions when Chip Kelly came aboard, and they switched to a 3-4 defense. And now he's back to his natural, 4-3, making plays all over the field. I guess the reason I did it was I'm not really impressed with Fletcher Cox. I know that sounds stupid, but he's supposed to be with Aaron Donald, one of the dominant defensive tackles in the league, and I just haven't seen it on a consistent basis this year. I mean, there have been times when he's been really good, but there's other times where he seems like he's invisible too. And I don't know if he's dealing with another injury or what, but I just haven't been all that impressed with him. And maybe that's the reason I didn't. But I have been impressed with Graham. Josh Sweat has really stood out to me. Barnett, I'm still not sold on. Vinny Curry, I think he's I don't want to say a waste, but I just don't see the big deal about bringing him back. And those other defensive tackles really haven't stepped up to to the point where I've really noticed them that much either. I guess that was the reason why the grade was what it was.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Check out his whole list of grades over at 97.3ESPN.com. Also, you can catch his extra point columns over on the website and on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. So, beyond the midseason grades, I did touch on the fact that you gave Doug Pederson, the coaching staff, a D. And I have to say that for me, I don't understand what is going on with this coaching staff. I mean, you covered the Eagles for a long time. You've seen a lot of different coaching iterations. Even under Andy Reid, there were people coming and going in different years. I feel like Doug Pederson I don't know if he's a pitcher who lost his fastball or he lost the edge on his curveball. I don't know if he's just not listening to people or he's listening to the wrong people. But it feels like when Doug Pederson makes decisions, you just can't trust him anymore.
Yeah, and I should couch this by the fact that I've been a huge Doug Pederson fan up to this point. I think being a former player and a former assistant, he kind of like he proved himself at various levels so that he deserves to do what he did and to he wasn't their first choice, obviously, but he's really made the most of his opportunity. I mean, getting into the Super Bowl, playoffs 3 straight years. So it's kind of hard to criticize the guy, but you're right. His decision making has been really puzzling this year. I mean, I just don't get like the going for 2 in the start of the game. Going in for 4th down, passing up, playing for the tie, which I guess might turn out in their favor, but still, I just didn't agree with it at the time, and I still don't. And I keep thinking back to the fact that there was no off season really, and Doug tested positive, which prevented him from interacting with a lot of people, for a couple of weeks as well. Although he did work with the team virtually, but that's just not the same as being hands on, so to speak. So I don't know if that affected him as well. But for whatever reason, you're right. It just seemed it's kind of like, I don't want to say he's lost the team, but it's just some of his decisions have just been really like befuddling to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think he lost the team, but I do think there's just something off there. And listen, there are coaches who have down years all the time. We're seeing with Bill Belichick right now at the Patriots. Sean Payton had 3 straight 7-9 seasons. So you can be a Super Bowl winning coach and have a down year or 2, but it feels like it's just such a crazy drop from what they were in 2017. And then 2018, 2019, there were injuries, but they were still at a winning record. They got in the postseason. The likelihood is this team is going to the playoffs, Dave, at 6-9-1 if they win the NFC East, and it just feels so hollow.
Yeah, it does. But I guess it's the same for every team, really. This season has just been so bizarre. Like I said, with no preseason games. It's just I don't know if they've really I haven't really found their footing, and I don't know if they will now. Halfway through the year, injuries, like you said, I think it's, the injuries have been tougher. Or I don't want to say tougher, but they've been pretty significant this year to key players. Zach Ertz, they really count on. It really started when Brandon Brooks got hurt, and just seems to have snowballed from there. Not to get back. I want to get back to it real quick. Was the Jason Peters situation? Just I don't understand that at all. When you're talking about Doug, why he would allow a player to just come in and dictate what position he wants to play. It just seems like everything's in upside down with that team, and I don't know if they're going to be able to turn it around this year.
I want to get your thoughts on a couple of other things outside of your grades. Again, folks can read your full grades over at 97.3 ESPN.com. A lot of great and interesting points Dave makes about different positions on the team, as well as he gives his offensive, defensive, and special teams MVPs. So folks can check that out over on the website or on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. I'm still in shock in the NFC East that the Dallas Cowboys, they are now benching Ben DiNucci. And they're going to have a quote-unquote competition this week between Garrett Gilbert, who the last time he played competitive football was in the AAF, and Cooper Rush, who I think has had a one snap or two or maybe three at the NFL level. I mean, talk about, we always talk about how frustrated we are with the Eagles, but the Cowboys are just finding new ways to make the Eagles look better.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but think that if Andy Dalton had been on the field the other night, that the Cowboys would have won the game. But he's not, and Dak Prescott obviously is out. So I'm kind of surprised they didn't sign Josh McCown the way the Texans did today. They sent him off the Eagles practice squad, and he's living in Texas. So I would much rather bring him in to take over than Cooper Rush, for crying out loud. I just don't get that at all. But yeah, their quarterback situation is just a complete disaster. Plus, it doesn't seem like anybody's really playing well for them at the moment. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott's just a shell of what he was, and offensive line's all banged up. Defense, they got Sean Lee back, but he really didn't have much of an impact the other night. So, yeah, they're just to be honest with you, they're just a dumpster fire in Dallas.
It's just amazing because I feel like there's a part of me that says, hey, I'm frustrated with the Eagles, but it could be worse. And I look around the NFL and I see what's going on in Dallas. I see what's going on with the Giants. I see what's going on in different teams like the Texans, for example, in the NFL. I feel like there's so many teams. You watch the NFL outside the Eagles and you're like, holy cow, it really could be worse. And I just feel like sometimes that context, I don't know if it makes you feel better, but at least it makes you feel a little bit less lousy.
Yeah, that's true. But I can tell you now, I think Washington's going to win the NFC East. I don't think it's going to be the Eagles.
Okay, you just dropped that on me. So give me a little more there. You can't just bring that up and not follow that up. So what is it about Washington that makes you believe that they have what it takes to do what the Eagles can't?
Well, they did it to the Eagles once. I just don't think the Eagles' schedule is the main thing. They're not going to win. They're not going to win a game outside of their division now. Maybe Cleveland, but I doubt it. But they're not beating Arizona. They're not beating Seattle. They're not beating New Orleans. They're not beating Green Bay. So the only shot they've got is to sweep the NFC East. The rest of the 3 games that they have left, and I just don't think they're going to do it. I think the Giants really scared them. I think they're gaining some confidence, and I think Washington's going to beat in the last game of the year. So I think Washington's schedule's a little bit better. It seems like Ron Rivera has a team believing in themselves, whereas Doug Pederson seems to have lost his way a little bit. So I just think Washington's going to win that division.
Yeah, my only problem
it's not going to be pretty. They might win 7 games, but I think they're going to win it.
At this point, you can win 5 games technically and win the division. I mean, that's how much of a dumpster fire the NFC East is. My only problem with Washington, Dave, is that I have no faith in their offense. I like their defensive front. I like the front 7. I think Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera are a great tandem of coaches. I just don't believe in their offense because when push comes to shove, I feel like if the Eagles play their style of football, they can beat Washington the second time around because to me, whether it's Kyle Allen or whatever version of Alex Smith this is now, or maybe they put Dwayne Haskins back in there, I just feel like Washington, their offense will find a way to come up short. That's just my opinion.
That's possible. Yeah. I just think the Eagles have such a tough road ahead of them. I don't think they're going to even be in position to win that final game to get the division. I think they're going to be out of it by then.
Dave, one more for you, and I appreciate you jumping on as you do each and every week here for a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. So Hunter Brody brought this up earlier, and I want to kind of reprise it for you because you're a baseball guy. And is it just us, or was it a little ridiculous that baseball decided to announce their Gold Glove Award winners in a television presentation on election night?
Yeah, that's just further proof that they don't get it. It was like, I think it was a subject on Twitter today too, where I don't know who thought that was a good idea. I mean, they're basically losing fans as it is. They're no longer that popular with younger people. Why you would pick election night to do that is just ridiculous. You were just guaranteeing that nobody's going to watch, and I don't know why you would do that. Yeah, it was just. But, nothing surprises me with baseball anymore. They're just they have a long way to go to gain back their fan base, I think.
Yeah,
and that didn't do it.
I just feel like I saw it last night, and I was like, is this real? Like, I had to do like a double take. I'm like, is this really, they decided to do this tonight? Like, there wasn't any other night they couldn't have found to do this? Like,
Yeah, seriously. Yep.
I mean, it's just so, I mean, I feel like, but that's baseball, right? Baseball was the only one of the four major team sports that had an argument over money during the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic. The other three sports had everything buttoned up and figured out, while baseball was arguing about money instead of worrying about COVID-19. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that's true. They've always had things backwards, it seems like.
All right, Dave, one more before I let you go.
Sure.
Is Appalachian State going to be 6-1 ahead of their big matchup with Coastal Carolina on November 21st?
Yes, they are. I never go against my Mountaineers. And they're going to beat Coastal Carolina, too.
To me, if they beat that team, then they should just outright just give them the conference at that point. I mean, it doesn't matter. Because Coastal Carolina has been pretty impressive.
Yeah, they have been. They have been. And the Appalachian, they stubbed their toe against Marshall. But, you know, that happens. But the road to the Sun Belt goes through Boone.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And then, you know what? That's why you're great, Dave, because you come on here, you have an opinion, even if it's just biased because that's your school. I love it. It's awesome. He's Dave Weinberg. You can follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Check out his extra point columns over at 97.3ESPN.com. And check out his podcast, Tequila and Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg. Dave, always appreciate the time, the conversation, and we'll catch you next week.
Well, thanks, Josh. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.